Evening, everyone. We're scheduled to start at 6 and I'm showing 6:01. Maybe we'll give it 2 more minutes and then we'll begin, okay? Appreciate your patience. Okay, maybe we can go ahead and begin then. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending the meeting. My name is Chuck Williams. I'm with the City of Moab. I'm a project manager on this project, and the purpose of tonight's meeting is this is our first focus group meeting on the Water Utility Resource Management Plan. This plan is a function of members of staff of the largest water utility providers in the valley, Moab Spanish Valley, meeting together probably for a year and a half. We've been coordinating on things and decided that one of the things we should undertake would be a resource management plan that would help us ensure as much resiliency as we could for the next 100 years in terms of water in our area. And I think a key part of this is that the utility providers, our job is to provide water, which includes planning as well as delivery. So this is a key, it's never been done before to our knowledge. We approached our legislative and management bodies about this, and they agreed that it was a good idea. And we are cost sharing on the project between what we call a coalition, which is Grand Water Sanitary Sewer Agency, San Juan Valley Special Services District, City of Moab, as well as San Juan County and Grand County, because they have legislative authorities that Grand Water and Sewer and the 2 special districts don't have. City of Moab is a utility provider and has, through our city council, has legislative authority for possible implementation of some of the recommendations that may come out of the plan. And with that, the coalition hired the firm of Hanson, Allen & Luce, and they've been working to get us to this point. We're only partway through the plan. We're using the Zoom format because we wanted the public to have an opportunity to get an update that the focus group's getting. We will also have, and we'll talk about it tonight a little bit more, some identified public meetings after in calendar year 2023. I think we have at least 2 scheduled, but we'll have about 3 other focus groups, which will be open to the public. I think that Mark Jolison from my office is kind of running the technical side of the meeting, but I think the format we'd like to follow is I'll turn this over to Ben Miner, who's our project manager for Hanson, Allen & Luce, and then we'll go through the presentation and then ask members of the focus group for their input, answer their questions, and then once we're done with that, we'll certainly have we'll open it up to the other members of the public who are attending tonight. And with that, the focus group members that I've identified so far on the screen are Luke Wojciechowski from the City of Moab and Dale Weiss from Grand Water and Sewer Agency. Is someone from the San Juan Special Services District here? I can't see everybody again because of so I'm not sure. So we'll ask those members for their input, so it can help us. We can respond to that. So if everyone's good with that, I'll turn the time now to Ben Miner and let Ben proceed with his presentation.
Thanks, Chuck. Good to be with you today and everyone who's here. This is a great opportunity for us to work with you, and we appreciate that opportunity. Just for a little bit of background, we have been working with the City of Moab on water resources for a number of years, and have worked with some other agencies in the area for a few years as well. We, as a firm, have worked with many cities and local districts throughout the state of Utah and the western states on water resources. So we once again appreciate the opportunity to do that. Members of my team include Katie Jacobson and Dan Jones, as far as the Hanson Allen Luce part. And so Katie's going to run the slides for me. I'll talk to those for a while. I want to do some general overview kinds of things first, and then Katie's going to get into the some of the details on water usage and production and water resources that we've done so far. So let me, and then also Logan Simpson Design is working on our public engagement portion of this with Olivia and Jim Carter, and Olivia Setko will do a presentation later as part of this to discuss the public engagement part. As a little bit of an overview too, this project happens in phases, and this phase is primarily to talk about the data that has been gathered and some of the initial results on the data, population projections, water use data, those kind of things. A future phase of the project will involve defining the kinds of projects that we might bring forward to help plan the future, as well as things like conservation and we also look at drought. So as far as the coalition members go, I have a slide up for that. Chuck has already gone through those. City of Moab, GWISA, Settlement Spanish Valley Service District, and Moab Irrigation Company. Certainly there are other water users out there, but these are the groups that essentially are the biggest groups, the groups that show leadership in the community, the groups that have important stewardship over water in the Moab Spanish Valley area, and so that's why that group those groups have been selected. So as far as this study goes, we have we have the Coalition of Water Providers that I talked about. We have us as the engineering consultants. We'll have public involvement. Certainly, we value public input on this. We want to know what you think. Please send emails, phone calls. I know there's some information on some links on the Moab City website, and so let us know what you think. We want your understanding as well. And then we also have engaged some water rights attorneys on this project to make sure that we are covered in a legal sense. Okay, here's the team. Once again, my name is Ben Miner, project manager with Hanson Allen Luce. Katie Jacobson is our project engineer and handles a lot of data, and Dan Jones also helps a lot with our data and a lot of the data analysis. So we appreciate our team on this. Also, we have Devin Shields. Devin, I know you're on today. Thank you for coming. Devin is with Sunrise Engineering, and he provides GWISA with some engineering support, as he's done for many years. So we appreciate his valuable input here as well. And Logan Simpson has the public involvement part. Jim Carter and Olivia Setko. Jim couldn't be here today, but Olivia is, and so thank you, Olivia, and we'll hear from you a little bit later. Okay, let's talk about the project purpose for a minute. Now, Chuck has already talked about this and introduced the concept, but I just wanted to mention a couple other things. So as you know, I think everyone here probably understands that Moab has been going through, and the Moab area, Grand County, this area generally has been going through sustained growth. There's population growth as far as the residents who, people are moving in, building homes, but also you have a very large tourism segment, obviously with Arches and the national parks and the Colorado River and many of the wonderful opportunities for recreation. There's a lot of recreation moving in. There's hotels, a lot of hotels and nightly rentals. So that's a big part of it. And so with those things, there has been increasing water demand, and there has been a concern among some folks as to the water supply. And so, is the water supply going to be adequate as the communities grow? And so Moab and Gwissa and San Juan Spanish Valley and Moab Irrigation Company, they are very forward thinking in answering this question. And hence we have this study to start looking at what are the needs of this community for the next 100 years. And so, I congratulate them on their vision and willingness to engage in this issue and try to plan ahead. So, so that's certainly a great idea. So we will have we have some goals, and those goals are, to have agency cooperation and coordination, look at having consistent water policies, try to share resources between agencies. If somebody has something extra that they can share with another agency, and it can reduce the total capital cost output from the agencies, then that's great, and that could be an opportunity. The communities want to plan for a resilient resource management for the next 100 years, and of course we'll plan for the needed infrastructure for the next 100 years. And so this study is, a good vision. Will provide a good vision of what that will be. Okay, let's talk about progress to date. We have done a lot of work so far. We have a lot of work left, but we wanted to come to the elected officials and to the community and talk about what has been accomplished so far. We have gone out to the agencies and asked for a whole bunch of data about many different things, and they have provided that to us. We have met with members of the coalition, talked about their data and their needs and water use and population projections. We have met with a number of stakeholders to get their input as to the future water use and supply. We have met a number of times with the Utah Division of Water Rights. Certainly, all water used in the state needs to be done so through a water rights process. And so we have engaged with the Division of Water Rights, and will continue to do so to make sure that in a legal sense, that we can, pursue the different avenues legally in accordance with water right requirements. We held an issues and opportunities workshop, and what this was an opportunity for the different coalition members to get together and just tell us what they think opportunities related to water can be realized, and what infrastructure is available. As consultants, we know a lot generally, but we don't know as much as we'd like sometimes about the community. There's nobody that knows more about your community water resources than the local folks, with these different agencies, and often with agricultural interests, farm interests, business interests. And so we have talked with them to see what opportunities are available. We have performed some population projections and some water demand projections. So those are a list of things that we have done to date. And later on, we'll talk about additional steps, but focusing on what we've done, those are the items. And then at this point, Olivia, we'd like to turn a few minutes over to you with Logan Simpson and talk about the public involvement that you have done so far.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia. Like Ben said, I'm with Logan Simpson. I'm based out of Salt Lake. We're hired on to do the public engagement piece of this. It's an interesting one because a lot of the public involvement in a process like this is on the informational basis, kind of saying, what are your big questions? and let's get you the facts so that they're out there, make sure people understand what this process is and what information they can get from it. Make sure that the information that we do obtain is understandable by the general public. So some of the things we've done so far to make sure that this process is happening in the public eye and involving people as much as possible. We have a web page on Moab City's website. If you go to their homepage, we're kind of featured down in their help section. A little process overview, how you can get involved, my email address, if people want to send over questions, things like that. We've also made a post about this upcoming workshop so that people can tune in and check it out. We also, our team, Logan Simpson, has been reaching out one-on-one and conducting roughly hour-long interviews with stakeholders. You know, people who work in utility departments, work in tourism departments, you know, residents that are longtime residents in the area, to kind of get a sense of what are those big questions that people have and can we answer those yet? Hoping to work on getting those questions and hopefully some answers up on the website soon here. So thank you, you read my mind. So the frequently asked questions that we got so far, I'll kind of run through those. We're working on pulling together answers. A lot of the frequently asked questions are questions that spurred this study. So there's no answers quite yet. But some of these questions we can start to formulate answers to, and we're working on pulling together a way to say that concisely to get up onto the website here. But here are some of our most frequently asked questions from this. You know, there were some questions about, unsurprisingly, the biggest one was how much water do tourists use? Are hotels wasteful? And do we have water for new development? If not, what are we willing to give up? What are our priorities for where that water is going? A lot of people were curious about the Colorado River and if that's a viable solution to save us from drought, and is that the answer to our water needs? There were quite a few questions. We did a lot of these surveys more towards the flash flood season. And some people were saying, we've got all this water coming through and it's, you know, destroying our homes. What do you mean we're having water problems? Why don't we just capture that water? And why isn't that water going into replenishing our aquifers? A good question, but I thought that was kind of ironic timing. Most of the questions seem to basically boil down to, can the Spanish Valley support both population growth and tourism growth? And if not, how do we prioritize and whose rights get prioritized over others? So those are the kinds of questions the public is asking. Like I said, a lot of these are kind of complex answers that are hopefully going to be answered by this study. One thing that we do have coming up is an open house next year for our solutions workshop. We're hoping to host a likely virtual open house where people can check in and ask us questions and get some answers. And we'll probably try to pull together a survey as well that people can give kind of their input on that at that open house. And so that's our next step here. But in the meantime, we're kind of working on just pushing information out to the public. And that's where we're at on public involvement.
Okay, thank you, Olivia.
Yeah, thanks.
Ben, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, thank you, Olivia. Appreciate that. Would like to take a few minutes to just do an overview of the water system, each of the water systems and the characteristics of those. First of all, we'll talk about Moab. You know, you have primarily a drinking water system. You have 5,400 residents approximately. Moab has to meet water demands for municipal, commercial, and industrial users, as in addition to the, you know, obviously the residential uses and a little bit of agricultural use. And it's used for indoor and outdoor use. The city has 5 wells, 7 springs, and 4 storage tanks. And so that's just an overview of Moab's water system. And we also have Gwissa, and Gwissa has 2,500 residents in the service area. They also need to do municipal, commercial, and industrial uses, indoor and outdoor. Gwissa does have a pressurized irrigation system, which helps with part of their system, and that works. You know, that's a great asset to have. The city has 6 wells. There's a diversion from Mill Creek via the Shealy Tunnel to Ken's Lake. And then there are 5 additional wells that help with Moab Irrigation Company. Storage is in Ken's Lake, and there are 3 storage tanks for Gwissa as well. And then we'll talk about the San Juan Spanish Valley Special Service District. A small and growing system at this point, but you know, there is a potential that area grows some more. Currently has 515 residents for indoor and outdoor use, 1 well and 1 tank. So they're smaller, but an important part of, you know, this valley, and has a lot of service area, which, you know, who knows how that will develop over time. And then we have Moab Irrigation Company with 3 mountain diversions, 3 lower valley pipe ditches within the city of Moab. They serve agricultural and residential uses. They get their water from Mill Creek and from the Gwissa wells. And so Moab Irrigation Company currently serves a lot of the community irrigation and agricultural needs as well. Okay, so we're going to dive into the data a little bit here. We have prepared a memo which has not been released yet. We'll release that next day or so, and the communities can review that memo. But right now we would like to dive into the types of data we have received, and some of the population projections and other projections we have done. And so I'll turn the time over to Katie Jacobson. She's the one that has spent a lot of time working through this data and can best speak to it. So thank you, everyone. And Katie, I'll turn the time over to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ben. As Ben said, our data is still preliminary at this time, so we just want to mention that there still may be changes to this. This is kind of a summary of what we've gathered so far. And as Ben said earlier, we requested data from all of the agencies, and they were all very responsive and returned a lot of data to us. We had over 47 documents or sets of data received. That included master plans, impact fee analyses, conservation plans, construction drawings, historical water usage, water rights summaries, GIS data, zoning information, and more. Now we'll go into our projections a little bit. So we first started with the population. So to determine what population numbers to use, we evaluated the agency master plans, their conservation plans, water rights, 40-year plans, and transportation plans. So those were all of the documents where each of your agencies has already made projections about their own population. We also looked at census data to kind of get some agreement and see how that matched up. We discussed those numbers with the coalition members, and we came up with what we're showing here for current and future projections. So we have each agency listed here: City of Moab, Gwissa, and San Juan. Moab Irrigation Company is generally, the lower mountain diversions are generally within the City of Moab. So we don't have a row specifically for them because they don't increase the population. We have the 2022 population here, and then we went through 2030, 2040, 2050, 2060, 2070, and then we jump ahead 50 years out to 2120. The numbers in green are projections that went beyond the ending period of the agency plans. So most agency plans go for about 20 to 40 years. And so many of these projections go beyond those. For City of Moab, we ended up with a 1.02% annual growth. So that gets us from about 5,800 residents now up to about 16,000 within our 100-year window. For Gwissa, we had a little bit more aggressive rate of 2% annual growth through 2070, and then we taper down to 1% for the next 50 years. And that gets us out to about 20,000 within the next 100 years for Gwissa. And then the San Juan Spanish Valley Special Service District, we used a 2% annual growth based on the current area of the district, the current population of the district. And we also included a SITLA development that has been proposed in the area. And so that brings the population there to 12,000, a total of about 49,000 within 100 years. So from population, we then converted the population and the water usage of each agency into an equivalent residential connection. So you'll see this ERC, equivalent residential connection, several times tonight. And so that's a way that the state agencies, local agencies, and water engineers compare the amount of water usage to the amount used by a home. So for example, a park that has acres and acres and acres of grass might be 20 or 50 ERCs because they're irrigating so much lawn that when you compare their water usage to the usage of a home, they might be 20 or 50 ERCs. A gas station might be 1 ERC. Maybe over the course of a year, they use approximately the same water as a residential home does. So an ERC is just a way for us to convert population and all of the commercial uses, industrial uses, and municipal uses within the city to a common unit. And so we've taken those population numbers from the previous slide, and we've used the agency reports and what they have projected for ERCs, and then also projected those out for the next 100 years. And so that gets us to a total of about 27,000. And these use the exact same growth rates that are shown in the population. So the ERCs grow at the same rate the population grows. And from there, then we take our ERCs and then we convert that to a water demand. So each of your agencies already has values set where they say 1 ERC uses a certain amount of water, and those are set to match and be consistent with the state standards. And the state standards divide that into indoor use and outdoor use. And so indoor use is based on the per ERC number. It's a certain number of gallons per ERC. And the outdoor use is based on how many irrigated acres you have. The state has this graphic that they use for the whole state that shows how much crops, including grass, would need relative to each other throughout the state. And so the blue areas need less water to be supplied, and the orange and pink areas need more. The remainder of the water is supplied by precipitation. So this is generally based on the differences in precipitation and evaporation across the state. And so out here in the Spanish Valley, you can see starting from Moab, they actually have Moab in the non-arable category. And so that usually gets assigned a category of 5 for high. And as you head south through the Spanish Valley, we get into the yellow and green areas that include the moderately high or moderate amount of water needed for outdoor use. So when we apply all of those numbers and factors to the ERCs, we come up with these projections for the number of acre feet of water that the agencies need to provide per year. So an acre foot is 1 acre of water, which is 44,000 square feet approximately. So 1 acre of water covered 1 foot deep by water. And it's measured that way because that made a lot of sense in the agricultural days when you knew how many inches of water you'd need to apply to your acreage. And so acre foot became a common value that was used. So again, we have each agency split out. We have City of Moab, Gwissa, San Juan Spanish Valley Special Service District, and Moab Irrigation Company. And this top portion of the table is indoor use, and the bottom portion of the table is outdoor use. So for example, for Moab irrigation, there is no indoor use. That's a completely outdoor system. So there's no values here. And Moab Irrigation Company, we assumed would remain consistent throughout the next 100 years. It's potential that it may grow, but that water will have to come from somewhere if they do grow. And so we just kept them at the same value. All of the other agencies, the difference throughout the years is based on the increase in population and ERCs and the increased water usage throughout the years. So we come up with, within 100 years, 25,100 acres. And we took a look at the sources that each of the agencies have, and we will discuss those in more detail in a little bit. But we added, we took the total amount for all of the sources to see how much they have produced every year. So this is wells and springs primarily. And the maximum on record is 2016, and that's 10,600 acre feet. We know that it appears the sources most likely can supply water through at least, the 2030, 2040 time period. The agencies don't produce more water than they need to out of their wells and springs. They just pump the wells as much as they need to. And so there may be a lot more capacity in those wells and springs than this. We also took the maximum that was pumped from each individual source, regardless of what year that occurred in for that source, and added those up, and that came out to 15,000 acre feet. And so that's maybe a point of reference where you can say it's likely that the sources can provide an amount of water in that range. Ben, do you have comment?
Yeah, let me just jump in with a comment on this part. As we look at the average demand projections over time, the obvious question is, well, do we currently have enough water to do that, or how long is our water going to last in terms of the annual production? And it's actually kind of a tricky question, because you've never had to pump that before, so until you try, sometimes you just don't know. Now there are things that you can do, and as of course as what we've done here is just tried to say, well, as a baseline, we know that you can pump what you pumped in the past, and so that's a place to start. You can also do aquifer studies and that sort of thing, which some of you have done to predict how long the water is going to last. So there are ways to approach that. There are different kinds of estimates to be made. We're not ready to talk about that today. We haven't made those projections. We'll work with the city, and they may need to do some additional work long term to decide that. But we do recognize that's an important question, and so we have really established kind of a baseline of what you have pumped before, and then it's a little more complex analysis to figure out where it can go. So I just wanted to highlight that. I know that's what people want to know. It's a little bit of a tricky question. Thanks.
And we also note that this study will absolutely include conservation, but these numbers do not include conservation. So these are the baseline numbers without conservation. Okay, so this is the amount that's needed annually in acre feet. And then we also look at how much is needed in gallons per minute on the peak day. And so we're looking at this because we want to make sure that on the day of highest demand, which for your area is going to be in the heat of the summer, on that summer day, how much water is needed in gallons per minute. So we need to check that the sources can provide a certain amount for the year. And then we also need to check to see that they can provide the amount needed on the peak day. And we can also use storage to help us meet that peak day goal. So again, this table is set up the same way, with the upper portion of the table is the indoor use in gallons per minute. The bottom portion of the table is outdoor use. And we come up with a total gallons per minute of 36,000. And so again, we haven't done the work yet to compare that to what the sources can provide. That's one of our future tasks, is to see how close are we to that and what do we think the sources could do. As we mentioned, conservation will be considered. So Moab and GWISA both have water conservation plans that they've given us. Moab takes their goals through 2030 and GWISA takes their goals through 2065. San Juan Spanish Valley is a brand new system and does not yet need to have a conservation plan. They need to get a few more years under their belt of supplying the water before they come up with a goal for how much conservation is needed. And Moab Irrigation Company is, being an irrigation company rather than like a drinking water supplier, doesn't usually submit a water conservation plan, and so they don't have a specific published plan. So we will take the percentage goals that Moab and GWISA have made and have conversations with San Juan and Moab Irrigation and apply those percentages to the demand projections that we've come up with. Okay, so we're looking, I guess next thing is we're going to look at recent annual production. And so as Ben said, what you've pumped in the past does not necessarily limit you in the future. It's just what you've done in the past. And so for 2021, we took the amount that each agency has billed to their customers, and we have that in this portion of the table. So when the agencies report to the state, they break out the amount that they've billed into each of these categories: residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, and that institutional often includes city properties, stock and agricultural, and then all of those get added up into a total. And for Moab has two separate reports. They have a report on the drinking water system. Often you'll see that referred to as culinary or potable water system, drinking water system. Those all three mean the same thing. It's water that's safe for people to drink, and it can be used indoor and outdoor. And then Moab has a separate report with a very small amount of water that's used on 3 wells that water city parks. And so that's in the Moab irrigation report. And then GWISA has 3 reports that they make to the state. So they have their drinking water or culinary system that supplies indoor and outdoor water. They have a separate pressurized irrigation system that they supply to their residents. And then they also have a few residents that live right over the county line. And so the state asks them to separate that out and do a separate report for that. That's also pressurized irrigation customers. And then San Juan has the combined system again, and they're just getting started. So that's the smaller amount that you see here. And again, Moab Irrigation Company is just outdoor, and we've kept that constant that Moab Irrigation Company doesn't have specific bills or meters on each individual customer. And so we just kept this at the amount that they plan to deliver to the customers throughout the year. So this portion of the table is all the amounts that get billed to the customers. We have the agency totals here and a total of about 6,000 acre feet. And then we have the amount that the agencies produced out of wells and springs, or that was received through Mill Creek. And so this number will always be higher. That includes physical losses in the system, like leakage out of pipes, or if people have a leak at their home. If you have a tank that overfills and it spills during the winter, that amount of losses in a pressurized system throughout the country ranges from 3% to 50%, with about an average of 16%. And then in addition to that, this also, you can see there's a huge difference here for GWISA. GWISA has Ken's Lake, and so in their numbers. And so Ken's Lake has seepage and evaporation. And so the water that seeps down is thought to be very important to aquifer recharge. And so it may look like a lot of water is being lost, but that water does get back down into the aquifer to benefit the groundwater wells in the valley. And so those numbers might seem higher than you might expect, but that's primarily because of Ken's Lake, since we have about 8,000 acre feet produced in 2021. And again, this is kind of a comparison of how much each agency has produced in the maximum year on record. So again, we've taken each agency and each of their systems and looked at the maximum year on record. So each of these rows may occur in a different year. For MIC, for Moab Irrigation Company, we've reduced that a little bit because in the year that GWISA had their highest amount produced, they did have some well water that was used for Moab Irrigation Company. And so we don't want to double count that. And so we've reduced that volume for the well production during that year. So that came out to about 11,500 acre feet was the maximum produced when you look at it in terms of each agency and what's the most they each produced in a year. Okay, next we'll do just a quick overview of what the sources are and how much they can produce. And so the first is our water production capacity. City of Moab, I won't read through all of these, but you can see Moab has several springs and wells. Some are used in the drinking water system, some are used to irrigate those city properties. And then we have a capacity on record of what Moab understands the capacity of those sources to be. So for Moab, that adds up to about 4,500 gallons per minute. For GWISA, we've listed GWISA's wells that they use for the benefit of GWISA customers. This does not include their 5 wells that are used for the benefit of Moab Irrigation Company. And on the Mill Creek flow for Sheely Tunnel, we've selected a median flow. When you look at every month on record, how much that flows, we just picked a median for that. And so we've got about 5,800 gallons per minute into GWISA. For San Juan Spanish Valley Special Service District, they have 1 well, and it's currently limited based on Division of Water Rights restrictions due to potential for interference with other wells in the area. And so that well will be able to pump more in the future, but it's currently limited to about 50 gallons per minute on average based on this Division of Water Rights restriction. And then Moab Irrigation Company, we've included the 5 wells here that are GWISA wells that are operated for the benefit of Moab Irrigation Company. And then Moab Irrigation does have some springs and wells, and the capacity of those is more challenging to figure out, so we don't have those yet. And then we have the water diverted from Mill Creek into the valley diversions 1, 2, and 3 for Moab Irrigation Company. And this is the amount that the company plans to deliver to those each year. These 5 wells up here are only used if the flows in Mill Creek are not sufficient for what Moab Irrigation Company needs to deliver to their shareholders. Okay, next we'll go over water rights. And so this is the amount that the state has indicated is allowed regulatorily to be pumped from the well. So this has nothing to do, well, it may be based on, but it does not mean this is the physical capacity of the well in terms of how much can you physically pump out of it. And it also does not mean that the aquifer has this much water. This is just the amount that the state has said is allowed to be pumped out of the well or taken from the spring or the creek. And again, we will be going into much more detail on studying these and determining what those other physical and aquifer limits are. So City of Moab, you can see all the wells and springs listed there. Some of those wells are not in use anymore, but the water rights can likely still be used. And that totaled to about 9,500 acre feet of water rights. For GWISA, we have all of theirs listed as well. And GWISA has a water right that a large water right that's used for Mill Creek and Ken's Lake. And we've just listed that on the Moab Irrigation Company slide. So that one's not included here. And without that, GWISA has about 11,000 acre feet of water rights on paper. San Juan Spanish Valley has a 5,000 acre foot water right that allows them to take water from the Colorado River and 23 different wells in the Spanish Valley area. And then Moab Irrigation Company, this is the large water right I was referring to on the GWISA page. We've listed that here for Moab Irrigation Company, and you can see there are others as well. Comes out to about 6,500 acres. Okay, on storage, as Ben had mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we were looking at if there are any resources that the agencies can share. And so an example of that might be a storage tank, that maybe GWISA has a storage tank and it makes sense to serve a high elevation area of Moab from GWIS's tank instead of Moab's. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. That's just an example of maybe a way that storage could be shared. And so we've listed out the storage tanks for each agency. So Moab has 4 of them that total 3.4 million gallons. GWISA has 3 storage tanks that total about 4.5 million gallons. And the volume of Ken's Lake is published ranging from about 24 to 2,800 acre feet. We have about 2,600 acre feet here, which is about 850 million gallons. Just to show, kind of the difference in scale between a lake versus, a pressurized irrigation pond lake versus a common storage tank. And then San Juan has 1 tank currently with a 500,000 gallon capacity. We wanted to go through the schedule that we've had overall. And so this is, I know you can't read this, so we'll zoom in on the next slide, but we've started back in May to begin coordination, and it's taken a long time to get all this data together. So we've had our data gathering and we've had meetings with the coalition members all along. We've begun doing all of our analysis of the data, and then that takes us into where we're at now. So today's meeting is here to meet with the focus group. We've completed a lot of the data activities, including summing the source and production data, looking at the water needs. We are in the middle of evaluating drought and conservation still. And as we move forward, we'll move into these other tasks, which I'll list out on the next slide. We'll continue to meet with the focus group. And as Olivia said, we plan to have a solutions workshop that will incorporate an open house format for the public to ask questions, and eventually prepare a written plan that will be submitted to the council, elected officials in this focus group, and have that plan finalized likely toward the end of May. So those next coming up tasks are listed here. And that brings us to the end of what we have. And are there any questions from the focus group members?
Yeah, so thanks, Katie. Yeah, Chuck, just would we like to just go ahead and entertain questions from the focus group, or however we'd like to proceed from here?
Yeah, I think we ask the focus group if they have questions, Dale or Luke, or if others from the focus group have joined in. Maybe you could close the sharing screen for now, Katie. You can come back to it if we need it. Thanks. So Luke or Dale, do you have questions?
Kind of question, kind of comment. Kind of looking at the population projections. I know that there's a lot of construction in the pipeline in both Moab and Grand County right now. I think kind of atypical from from historical norms. So I guess my concerns are that we might kind of reach that capacity a little bit quicker than the projections might indicate. And I don't know when those things are kind of going to go online. I know a lot of stuff is kind of up in the air because of supply chain issues and kind of the interest rates going up right now. But as far as I understand, between Grand County and Moab, I think there's over 1,000 units in the pipeline already, which should be a pretty substantial increase above the kind of I can't remember, Moab's is 1% year over year population growth.
Yeah, we had 1.02%.
Yeah. So I guess my concerns are that yeah, we're going to kind of increase the rate at which the population is growing significantly faster than what the projections might be indicating. But that's kind of the biggest thing that stuck out to me right now.
Yeah, population projections are a challenge. I have this kind of tongue-in-cheek saying that population projections are wrong a certain percent of the time, and that percent is 100. They're tough to get right. The other thing about population projections is that a lot of times the growth happens in spurts, right? So you'll have a hot economy and things will go crazy, and sometimes it's tempting to use that population spurt and project off that, and a lot of times then the economy will slow down again. And so I hear you. It might be different than this, and we can talk internally whether we want to adjust those. But like I said, population projections, they're tough. There are a lot of things that go into it. Economy is part of it. Part of it's availability of water, obviously. And then of course our study area only has a certain area that it can grow just in the valley. So I definitely hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. And so we can talk internally on how best to handle that.
Right. Yeah. Another thing that I kind of thought of is as we develop. So as far as I understand, kind of like outdoor use instead of residential use, it's typically kind of like a higher per like area, like there's a higher usage amount like per kind of equivalent area. And so as I don't know how to kind of factor this in, but as we're developing more land, so potentially if any of the municipalities kind of convert like the rural agricultural land zoning into more residential, would that would kind of offset the usage for that area. And yeah, I don't know how we go about kind of factoring that in. That's something that I think like city council and kind of the respective governing bodies would have to figure out what levels of kind of agricultural and like outdoor spaces they'd want to leave open versus making sure that we have room to accommodate all of this growth. And then my other thought and kind of like probably biggest concern is just with the uncertainty regarding the Colorado River. I know that we have water rights that are tied to it, but with kind of the chaotic nature of living in the Southwest and the amount of demand that basically that entire area's population is putting on the river is like, should we even factor those in our like water rights numbers and like production capacities? Because I don't know what's going to happen between like the interstate kind of agreements and if and when the federal government steps in, what that's going to look like. So to me, kind of the water within the Colorado River is a really big uncertainty. Let alone there's a pretty significant amount of uncertainty as to just how much water is within our aquifers.
Yeah, those are two good questions. On the converting land, I agree that there's a policy piece to that where as that land converts from ag to growth, the community, whether it's the county or the city, can assign zoning and does assign zoning, but also can assign required conservation measures if they choose. Meaning maybe they have to use more low water use, landscaping and those kind of things. And of course, already in the code is the new low water use appliances. So there's that piece to it. In terms of what's policy right now that we're looking at, the communities have adopted the water conservation plan, and so there are goals already in place to start addressing that. Now, conservation is something where you have to be a little bit careful with it because it's really easy to want to be aggressive about conservation, but getting compliance is a little tougher. The city and West actually have some pretty aggressive conservation plans already. So the good news is as they work toward those, you will see, certainly conservation. And they have spent a lot of time, already starting down that conservation path. And so I'm sure they will, continue to look at that. But as part of this study, we have essentially at this point adopted the goals that they have established already and following those, which we think are good. Now, one of the things we want to accomplish too with this study is to be realistic, and nothing we say in this study dictates what a government might do in the future. What we're trying to do is have a realistic long-term view of what might happen and plan around that. So we have included conservation in that. Your second question on the uncertainty of Colorado River is, I agree that we just don't know. I mean, that's the bottom line. We just don't know. And there are a lot of people that rely on that river. And the communities will have to decide going forward whether they want to take the Colorado River as a source. The one advantage, you guys have is it's right there, right? So you're so close to it. It's very tempting to put in a straw and pull water out. And I think for the relatively small amounts of water, even with significant growth, as a portion of the river, it's still a very, very small amount. And so I think that the Colorado will technically be able to support a lot of development if you decide to go that direction, which you might not, but we'll have to see how it plays out if the federal government change or the states change the allotment of the Colorado River water. I know that the Division of Water Rights right now has been looking at the rights on the river. And if it gets into a negotiation on how to rewrite the law of the river, then those existing rights, the state will push to put those existing rights in that contract. They have told us that. So I don't know that that's much of an answer, but I agree with what you're saying, where we need to pay a lot of attention to that, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. But if it's decided that there is more water needed, it's also, a super close option.
Yeah, I think thank you for your responses. I appreciate it. And I think that's kind of all I have right now. If I come up with anything, I'll ask.
Thank you.
Dale, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I just have a concern about replacing agricultural lands with development and its effect on our water table and our aquifer. The agriculture, there have been estimates that 50% of the water used in agriculture goes back down into the aquifer. If you replace that with development, what is that going to do? As well as the fact that our agricultural areas are capturing water that may not be captured during development as well. So that's another factor we may want to consider with regard to how much water we're going to have if we are getting rid of agricultural lands through development.
Yeah, well, all I can say is I agree with what you're saying. I mean, we've seen that as, as you apply a lot of that water onto a field, some gets used and a lot does not. I say not, I mean, it seeps in and becomes either part of the groundwater or maybe even return flows to the river. And so there's a change. I will say this, that as the changes happen, in other words, conversion of the agricultural land to, say, municipal use, the Division of Water Rights, at least on a water rights side, recognizes that the equation changes. And a lot of times they won't allow the full water right to be used maybe for municipal use. Now, if we talk about indoor versus outdoor, indoor use is essentially all return. There's some teeny percentage that isn't, but for the most part, that does return. So whatever people use inside their homes will show up at the treatment plant and will show up back in the Colorado River. And then, you look at the outdoor use is different. I mean, obviously, if you're putting a lot more water on a field, then it's going to return. What a lot of communities will do is just try to carefully track water levels, have a program. Sometimes the agricultural interests will do the same thing, farmers or whatever will, they can track their own water levels. And a lot of times large water districts or communities will track water levels as well to see if you can detect a change. I'm not sure I have a great answer for you, except that I agree that's an issue that, that we need to think about and that a community, could look at over time. Katie, I don't know if you've had any different experience with all of your studies.
No, I think I agree with all of that. I think that all makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks.
Dale, anything else?
No, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Mac, would you like to comment from San Juan County? Any questions or
No,
comments?
I think, you look at one of the concerns, and I want to make sure just it's mentioned and noted here is, that population growth is, it's subjective, and, a lot of that is controlled through zoning. And so we tried to be real about these projections, because I think, in a hypothetical realm, it's good to know, as we try to set forth a plan of infrastructure needs for the future, and, trying to keep a conservative growth model in there is important. And so I just want to make sure that, I think it's something that's got to be reiterated to the public, as that those things can change, and it's, we did our best. The consulting team tried to do their best on, trying to take a conservative approach with it. But I think in the same token, we want to be real with the expectations to, especially right now, as you look at that potential for growth, what do we need to do now to plan for that? And even if it's a high number or medium number, what do we do in the future for that? And so, we've got a lot of opportunities now that, the mayor brought up, agriculture, and the state is working really hard to place conservation areas for these agricultural areas. I spoke to a property owner last night in Spanish Valley area that, they would like to keep their area and their property agriculture, and how do they do it? And, the generations that are coming behind us, they're not really interested in raising alfalfa anymore. And so they automatically just turn it over to housing development, because that's what pays. You can make a lot of money with it. And so you place those measures right now, and you look for those opportunities where, if there are areas that we can conserve agriculture, that's what feeds us. And so it's important to always try to preserve those that you can, but knowing that property owners have rights. And so it's kind of a mixed bag, but, going through these studies and taking these opportunities to look to the future kind of gives us a chance to set systems in place to meet it. And so, that's all I got.
Dana, is there anything you'd like to say?
How's it going, Charlie?
You're on mute. Dana, you're on mute, I think.
You could chat to us in the chat, Dana. Maybe. I don't see the chat. Maybe there isn't one for this.
Hello? Okay, I think I got it to
Yeah,
work.
there you go. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I had this plugged in with headphones, and it still thought I was using a microphone and not this anyway, regardless, I had a quick question for you about the data on Ken's Lake that you showed earlier. That difference, in addition to seepage and evaporation of the lake, it also includes increasing the storage in the lake level. So we didn't lose 2,000 acre feet or whatever the difference was in seepage and evaporation. We probably put 1,600 into the lake.
Yeah, yeah, I knew there was something I was forgetting to mention. That was it. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, thanks. That's all.
I think we've covered the focus group. And we could open it up to members of the public who've attended tonight if you have questions or comments, but I don't know that we have the ability to raise your hand on this, but if you've got something to say, we'll find a way to try and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. So if anyone would like to go first, if you have questions or comments. Going once. Going twice. Wow.
This is the first time I've ever seen Arnie be quiet. Arnie, you okay?
Well,
there he is. I knew he'd be there.
well, okay, that's good. I'm glad everyone attended and are able to see where we're at in the plan. We've recorded this and our intent is to post it to the city's YouTube channel by next week. So the people who are either challenged and couldn't figure out the Zoom link and wanted to attend may find it easier to get onto the YouTube through the internet. Or if you want to see it again and look at the information that was presented by Ben and his team, that'll be available too. The schedule, I have to be honest, is I think it'll go a little bit longer than May because I think we're going to get into the meaty stuff next. And I think there'll be, we'll want to take the time to do this right, even though we don't want to belabor it more than it needs to. So unless there's any final comments from anyone, Ben, you good?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you. We're glad to be here. And if you go home or later think of a question and wished you'd asked it, just go to the city's website. There's a link on the front page to the study, and there's a contact information to Olivia, and you can send her the question or send it to Chuck or whoever, and it'll get to me, and we can address it. Thank you.
Yes. Good summary. All right, then, if that's all, then thanks. And there's a little bit extra time for your evening. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thanks.